Up on the screen here, you can see, a picture tells 1,000 words. This is the West Palouse River Drive property out where we had planned on the ball fields at one time. The area that we're talking about is the southern area, 28 acres, and that's tilled land. The northern part where you can see the cyclocross course, that's basically in hay right now. And so over the years, when this thing first started, when the city first purchased this property, Mr. Clyde continued to farm it. That helped keep the weeds down, and basically so it just wasn't wasted ground while the city got its ducks in order to develop whatever it was going to be. In our case, we had planned for this to be ball fields. Over the time, it just didn't happen. You're aware of all the issues that came up with that. But he continued to farm it, and but it's been at no expense to the city as far as paying him to do any of the weed control, but at the same time he does harvest this and get a paycheck for his crops. And we just finally decided it was time for the city to recover some of the revenues off this property, so it's at $70 an acre, which ends up being about $1960, I think, a year. Yes, $1,960 a year. And of course, we set in parameters there that either can terminate the contract, but it's an ongoing up to, I think, 10 years contract, year to year, while we determine what the future of this property is.
Does this affect this year, or does it start?
It does. It's in effect this year. We had basically a verbal agreement to this, and then he left the area for the winter and most of the spring as well. And he doesn't working business with him when he's out like that doesn't work. So, but we had already agreed on it, and so it wasn't an issue when he got back.
What would weed control cost us on this? How much would it cost us to maintain that section of ground?
I have not done the figures on that. All I know is, that's 44 acres, and we would have to control the weeds. I don't know the answer to that. But at the same time, with this, he is still controlling the weeds. To include over where the hay is and along the creek beds, and so not only is it just weeds, but also he cuts that grass, and so you kind of have a park area to walk in at least part of the year as well. This year's an exception, but years prior and the years after this.
Okay, well, I honestly don't know that I could support charging Sherman to farm his ground. It's he kind of made a pretty good deal with the city, and he still does keep everything down there where the bicycle course is too now, and so I would vote against this. I don't know if there's any motion to make if I do it. Somebody'd have to move to pass it, I guess.
Well, I'd kind of like to argue the opposite point a little bit, in that it's good, well-tilled, productive farmland, and farmers engage in lease arrangements of their lands to their neighbors or other people, or if you're an absentee landlord, you lease it back to the local guys. And part and parcel of any cultivated land, you also have the issue of weed control, soil care, and all the rest of the things that go along with it. So the lease agreement amount actually takes into account the fact that the farmer reaps a certain amount from the crops he plants, deducts the input costs, the diesel, the seed, and all the rest of it, and then what's left over is profit. And so rather than pay taxes on it and things like that, this is a way of recouping that back into the city coffers. And $70 per acre is not egregious from what I hear about what lease land goes for on the Palouse. So allow me just to be the devil's advocate and talk the other direction.
That's fine.
Wayne? have to agree with Art a little bit, and of course then disagree with Dan. Well, we did get a pretty good deal from Sherman when he sold the land to the city, and the idea at the time, of course, was to develop it into parkland. And that obviously hasn't happened, and if I was going to take a long-term look into the future, I would guess it's probably not going to happen. At the same time, with 28 acres of city-owned property and letting it being farmed without any cost or any retribution or any money back to the city, I think we need to look out for the public land a little bit, and probably $70 an acre is not unreasonable. So.
Do we have other agreements like this where we have anybody farming any of the city ground? I mean, we own the Phillips farm, but nothing really, there's no real active farming out there, is
We
there?
had an agreement on the Phillips farm years ago. Kyle Hawley, I think, was involved in farming that. When we took it back and essentially leased it to the county for use as a county park, we did not charge. In fact, we participated somewhat in the maintenance. But we don't have any other leased premises other than like the ITC that have a specific use as an office building or something like that. But we don't have any unimproved farmland that we lease out. This was a case of first impression, and when Mr. Clyde sold the property to the city, he approached the city. Randy Rice was our Parks and Rec director at the time. It was a good deal. I don't know what Sherm's idea was, whether he was trying to liquidate out of farming or what, but he did agree as part of that to continue to farm it in order to keep the weeds down. Since that time, though, it's become a long-term. We expected that property would be developed within 5 years. Of course, now it's been probably 12 years, 14 years. And 28 acres, $70 an acre. I lease farmland myself. $70 an acre is not egregious at all. And Sherm's agreed to it, Dwight.
Yes.
So anyway, that's the background on it.
Jim or John, you got any input you want to put in this?
Well, I would think that that's quite a reasonable amount. If he's farming, roughly 30 acres there, and if he gets 90 bushels of wheat at $7 a bushel, then he's making some money on that deal. So it seems like from the standpoint of the taxpayers of the city of Moscow, we have some sort of a duty to try and get some remuneration for that. So I don't think it's a ridiculous price to ask. We're not trying to get him to give us all the profits and stick him with the weed control. So it seems reasonable. If he's okay with it, then I guess I'd be okay with it.
John?
I have to agree. The closest thing I can come up with that is maybe a parallel to this, maybe not, but is the farmer's market. And we charge people that come into the farmer's market on a weekly basis. And they're on city property, and they use some of the city services. And this is also city property, and he is using it, and he's making some money off it. So I think that, fair is fair, however you want to put it. That, and there again, not knowing anything about the farming end of it, but I've had a number of people say that $70 an acre is not too much, and I know Sherm. And believe me, if it was too much, boy, you'd still hear him hollering from Hawaii. So,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve item H of the consent agenda, which is to approve the lease agreement with Sherman Clyde.
I'll second.
Okay, Wayne made a motion to approve this lease agreement with Sherm and Clyde, and John seconded it. We'll start the roll with John.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Okay. That's 3-1, so we will move on. 4-1 meeting.
Thank you.